The views and opinions of the producer, hosts, and guests in the show do not directly reflect the official stand and policies of the management, the network, and the company.
Empower your mind. Be informed dahil lamang ang may alam. Knowing the latest trends and issues in the society. Feed your mind with information that are reliable, fresh, and straight from the experts. Be involved here in the conversations with Chester Quidlat, broadcasting live in big media. This is The Conversations.
Good afternoon, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and to all our kababayan worldwide. I am your anchor, Chester Quidlat, and welcome to the 5th episode of The Conversations. Once again, we would like to grab this opportunity to thank our students, professors, and youths who watched our episode in the past Saturdays. And last Saturday, on our 4th episode, we got a lot of views from different youths and organizations as well for the very informative topic that we discussed. And this afternoon, I know that majority of you are just had your lunch and now tuning in here in the conversations because we are going to have another discussion. And our discussion this afternoon is something to do about our the result of DOH yesterday for having correct me if I'm wrong, we have 9,838,000 confirmed new cases just yesterday. Okay? And of course, for our topic this afternoon, the lockdown, the Philippine COVID-19 response assessment. Disclaimer, we are not professionals in terms of medical field, but me and the expert guest later will discuss and tackle about what's the real score. What is the real thing about the government right now facing this pandemic? This March, we are actually celebrating the 1 year, okay, of being locked down and having this pandemic. The youths voiced out a lot of their sentiments about the current administration, but believe it or not, there is something that needs to be changed and to be replaced because it's more than a year as we are talking here live, and having this kind of new cases is no longer a joke. But I know it's not a joke that the government is doing their thing, their job, but having this kind of new cases, having the vaccines arrived, I don't think that there is something to change, or there is something to change. And millions of people are affected. Maraming kababayan ang walang trabaho. Marami ang mga kababayan nating gutom. Pero sa kabila ng mga ito, may mga proyektong hindi natin lubusang maintindihan kung bakit ito pa ang inuuna sa panahon ng pandemya. Kaya naman ngayong hapong ito sa seryosong panayam at pakikipagtalakayan para sa ating expert guest, alamin natin, suriin natin, okay, timbangin natin kung ano nga ba ang mga bagay, kakulangan at mga dapat pang gawin ng ating gobyerno at tayo mismo bilang mamamayan. Ulitin ko, hindi lamang ito laban ng gobyerno. Ito rin po'y laban nating mga mamamayan sapagkat nagsisimula sa atin ang pagkakaroon ng disiplina, sa pangunawa ng pandemyang ito. Kung hindi rin po tayo makikinig sa implementasyon ng ating gobyerno sa pangunguna ng IATF, hindi po magiging successful ang ating programa. Alam ko na marami sa atin ang nagsasabi na it's the government that have this kind of problem. But mind everyone that we also have the responsibility to be more vigilant because we are fighting our enemies cannot be seen. We don't know that we are facing them. No? Nakasabay na natin. And I would like to recognize the frontliners who fought since day one. To the frontliners, the medical practitioners who died because of the pandemic, I salute you. To the families, thank you for letting these heroes of this pandemic fight for us. Kaya naman sa pagbabalik ng ating programa, ipapakilala ko na ang ating guest expert kung saan tatalakayin natin ang tungkol sa pandemya, sa pagkakaroon ng mabagal na aksyon at hindi maayos na pagsunod ng mamamayan. This program is about the lockdown, the Philippine COVID-19 response assessment. The conversations will be right back.
We'll be back shortly. This is The Conversations, only here on Big Media.
Technology allows us to explore a variety of opportunities. So why not grab one for you? Kickstart your online business with Big Benta. Create an account, visit our store builder, then make your online shop. Be visible, gain customers, and run your business hassle-free. Plus, enjoy the support of our local merchandising team to maximize our platform. Make technology work for you with Big Benta, Pinoy e-commerce site made for you. After this pandemic, let's support the Filipino community. Buy local, visit local, go local.
Now back to The Conversations, only here on Big Media.
Welcome back to your program. And as I promised earlier, hindi na po natin patatagalin sapagkat ay papakilala ko na ang ating guest expert this afternoon. Pero bago ang lahat, kilalanin muna natin siya. Our guest this afternoon obtained his AB Political Science degree, cum laude, from Far Eastern University, Manila, and did his internship at the Office of the Vice President in 2015. He was the Secretary General of Youth for Human Rights and Democracy from 2018 to 2019. He is currently doing his PhD in philosophy at De La Salle University, Manila, and is planning to specialize in ethics, philosophy of religion, and political philosophy. He currently teaches social science and philosophy course in CIIT College of Arts and Technology in Quezon City. Youths, students, ladies and gentlemen, our guest expert for this afternoon, Mr. Patrick Pineda.
Hello, good afternoon, Chester.
Good afternoon, Sir Patrick, and welcome to the program. Before
Thank you for
anything else,
inviting me.
mhm. So before anything else, um, kamusta ang ito tinatanong ko sa lahat ng aking mga nagiging guest sapagkat sila'y guro din.
Mm.
Ikaw, Sir Patrick, kamusta ang transition mo from from the normal to digital, to traditional to digital?
Okay, that's actually a good question. I remember the last day we had our face-to-face classes. Actually, hindi siya klase, no? March 8th, I was with my students in Intramuros kasi part of our history and Visual course na pumunta kami doon. Sabi ko gusto kong makita nyo yung mga dinidiscuss natin sa klase. And then the next day, we suspended classes. At least for CIIT, we suspended our classes. And then, kinagabihan, nagsuspend ng 1 week for Metro Manila. During the suspension of classes, we still reported to work for us, the faculty. And I'm fortunate enough to work in an institution na maliit ang staff size, so madaling mag-implement ng programs. So the 1 week suspension provided us with planning. And I'm also grateful also kasi even before the pandemic, we had this infrastructure in place, like yung learning management system, um, online teaching modules, etc. So it was not so much of a work for us kasi siguro blessed na rin kami kasi nandun na yung infrastructure. The problem lang is implementation. So first week of the lockdown, nagtuloy yung klase namin for online. Pero of course, we had the problems na nawawalan ng internet. Ako minsan, nawawalan ako ng internet nung nagkaklase ako. Kasi we maintained the 3 to 4 hour structure. And then some of our students were also complaining na hindi na kaya ng laptop nila kasi they use it, naghahati-hati sila ng mga kapatid. And then around April to May, we suspended our online classes. Kasi nagkataon din naman na kakatapos lang ng finals. So we used a 2 month break to recalibrate our approach. And then we started our online classes last June 15. In fact, we were one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, to resume our college classes. For me personally, the transition is, sa akin madali eh. Madali. Kasi siguro dahil sanay tayo sa internet, no? Pero of course, there are also some things that you miss siguro in the traditional approach. Like for example, wala akong whiteboard kasi ako I like writing sa whiteboard eh. Hindi naman mawawala yun. I like writing sa whiteboard. Yun, the opportunity to meet your students and ask them questions, that's one. Kasi syempre, you cannot expect them to speak all of the time. I also miss the opportunity of yun nga going out and showing them these are the places kung saan dito. Ito yung dorm ni Rizal nung time na nag-aaral siya sa Intramuros. Mga ganung bagay. Pero in terms of the workload, for example, ako aminin ko, mas nakakapagod for a teacher magturo from home. Bakit? Kasi you need to prepare, of course. You need to prepare your lessons. And then after the lesson, syempre nandyan yung mga students mo magtatanong, Sir, paano to? Sir, paano yan? Paki-explain to. And then sometimes, nabe-blur yung boundaries kasi. Like, minsan may mag-PM sa akin, 10 p.m. Pero ngayon, meron kaming silent agreement siguro ng students ko na don't PM me on weekends, don't PM me after working hours. Kasi, as soon as we started working from home, siguro na-blur yung lines ng home at opisina. Ano pa ba? So far, I'm still trying to adjust So, hindi ko masasabing expert na ako, pero I'm still trying to adjust rin. Pero there's a wealth of opportunity that we have to explore also. Siguro we're just lucky na we have the resources din.
Correct. Kasi it's been 1 year, no? That
Yes.
aside from, I don't know if this is the right word, no, celebrating the COVID-19, the pandemic itself. But of course, it's also the first year, no, in the academic world na you are teaching talaga digitally. And hindi natin maisasang tabi, no, Sir Pat, na may mga guro din na nahihirapan pa rin mag-adjust, no?
Agree. Agree.
And what can you
Um,
say about that kind of setup so far?
of course, meron tayong students na hindi nakapag-enroll, for example. We have
Yes.
teachers um, who just opted not to teach kasi
Mhm.
we're online. Um, I would not blame them kasi it's really a sudden shift eh. It's really a sudden
Mhm.
shift. We're all thrust into it, and parang ano siya eh, parang it's a fight for survival, I must say. But at the same time, this shows the lack of support for most people, given that we have these problems. Kasi
Mhm.
kumbaga dapat meron tayong foresight kung ano mga pwedeng mangyari. Um, the COVID-19 was already in the headlines last January. And
Yes.
then, yung lack of preparation na sobrang kampante siguro na hindi naman yan dadating dito. We have
Mhm.
one or two
Naging
cases lang
masyado
siguro.
kasi tayong kampante. Pero yun na
Oo.
nga, ang topic natin talaga this afternoon, eto, dyan natin talaga tatalakayin. Pero bago ang lahat, gusto ko lang batiin ang mga kababayan nating OFW na nakatutok ngayon, Sir Pat, sa atin. So sa Macau, binabati ko si Miss Rosalie Castillo Eugenio na nakatutok sa atin. Yung mga OFW natin dyan na talagang laging nanonood yan sa The Conversations. Yung mga kababayan din natin sa Middle East, na talaga namang sumusuporta kasi very informative daw ang topic na to. Lalo na daw ngayon kasi we are talking about COVID-19, ang pag-uulat natin tungkol sa nangyayari sa ating bansa ngayon. Maraming salamat po. Okay, now, Sir Patrick, eto na ang tanong. Okay? Thank you for sharing yung inyong experiences. Talaga namang saludo kami sa lahat ng mga guro. Pero once and for all, eto na. Sir Patrick, were the Philippines COVID-19 response sufficient?
Okay. Was it sufficient? Honest answer, hindi. Honest answer, hindi. I think na-mention mo kanina, no? Yesterday, we had 9,838 cases. Is it a sign of success? No, it's not a sign of success. Just a few weeks ago, Secretary Carl Chua of NEDA said that there are 3.2 million residents of Metro Manila experiencing hunger, and 500,000 residents of Metro Manila are unemployed. Is it successful? Hindi. Um, we have a downturn of 9.5% na pagbagsak ng GDP, which is the worst after the Second World War. Not even after martial law. This is um, so from 1946 up to now,
Mhm.
9.5% bumagsak yung GDP natin. So, are we succeeding? Obviously, hindi. Kasi ang bagal ng rollout natin ng vaccines, that's for one. We have the longest lockdown in the world. It's now 300, I don't know, hindi ko na nabibila, pero 1 year na tayo naka-lockdown eh.
Yes.
Um, and tawag dito, we cannot buy more time if infections are rising. Kasi, and we cannot depend on the vaccination program. Sometimes, we have to do our part as responsible citizens to respond to the challenge. Kasi, of course, there's the job of the government. I understand that. And there's the part of frustration on the lack of the government response. But as responsible citizens, we also have to do our part. As simple as wearing your face mask when you go outside, washing your hands every time you touch something outside of your home, wearing
Mhm.
your face shield, maintaining your distance, di ba? Yung simple sneezing and cough etiquette, di ba? Sometimes when I walk outside, when I may bibilhin
Mhm.
ako, there are still people who would remove their masks para dumura. That is so unsanitary, di ba?
Yes.
I mean, those little practices would help much. Would help much. It's a partnership between government and the public. The government has to do its part in terms of the vaccine rollout, increasing hospital bed capacity, etc. And at the same time, citizens, tayong mga mamamayan, we also have to do our part, di ba? Yung simpleng pagsunod sa health protocols, di ba? I understand that you need to go outside to go to work. But the simple following health protocols, it would really help much. It would really help much.
Mhm.
Kasi hindi natin madedenay. You really have to go out to work for some of our mga kababayan natin. Especially, for example, sa construction, sa food industry sector, di ba? But the simple fact na, kunwari mamamalengke ka,
Mhm.
kakilala ko naman yung tindera, pwedeng hindi ako mag-mask. Pero hindi natin alam, paano kung may dala siya? Paano kung asymptomatic siya? Hindi niya alam. And, di ba? And siguro that we can also put into consideration also that we don't have a mass testing program. Di ba? You really
Correct.
have to depend on the local government, for example, for testing. Pero
Mhm.
syempre, given the limited resources also, ilan lang yung na-accommodate ng local governments natin.
Totoo.
Siguro looking back, starting from March last year and March
Mhm.
this year, um, it's quite ironic for me kasi na this administration was pushing for federalism, di ba? 2017 pa lang, they were
Yes.
pushing for federalism. Pero our response is one size fits all. Ibig sabihin, kung ano sinabi ng national, yun ang susundin ng mga mayor. Kasi kaya nga I remember last year, di ba? Mayor Vico Soto of Pasig.
Mhm.
Napagalitan siya kasi pinayagan yung
Yeah.
tricycles. At the time na mababa pa lang yung cases, dito, walang hanap buhay mga tricycle drivers natin. Um, if there was a, kung meron mang compelling reason to grant our local governments autonomy over their respective geographical jurisdictions, this was
Mhm.
the time di ba? From mass testing, procurement of vaccines, etc. Kaso there was a bottleneck on the side of the national government. And dito natin nakikita paulit-ulit yung problem. Kasi if you ask some people, they trust the local governments more than the national government in terms of response.
I
And
agree.
ito yung nagiging problem. Ito yung nagiging problem. Kasi if you don't have the trust of your people in terms of addressing a national emergency such as a pandemic, magkakaproblema talaga.
Mhm.
Diba? How would you expect people to comply with, for example, health protocols such as the ban on mass gatherings when you have people who are in power doing parties, for example, or going to a restricted area kahit alam nilang meron silang COVID-19, 'di ba? Kasi I believe that public officers should be at some level no, they should be role models eh. If you want people to follow you, you better lead by example. Pero kung meron kang
Exactly.
makikita, 'di ba, na nagpapa-party, for example, I won't mention names. I think kilala naman natin kung sino.
Mhm.
Nagpapa-party, nagpa-mass gathering,
Yes.
nag-iikot ng bansa. Well, what's the incentive for our ordinary people to listen to your health protocols if those in power don't listen to it, right?
Correct. Sir Patrick, since we mentioned or you mentioned earlier about this the national and the LGU's action no in terms
Mm,
of this kind of pandemic, let's divide it first no. Let's go to the government side and to the individuals no sa mga
mm,
mamamayan natin. Here in the government side, what do you think is the problem or the lack of their action? Kasi we are now in the first year and yesterday we have the highest cases. Do you
mm.
think this is straight to the point? Do you think that the current group of people who's handling the COVID-19 pandemic today has a problem or needs to be changed? We can be
Okay.
particular, even a person.
Okay. Siguro I'll start with a general observation. I'll
Okay.
start with a general observation. Um, just a matter of advice, if they are listening. A certain dose of humility would help. A certain dose of humility would help. What do I mean by that? It would help if you admit that you made mistakes. It would help that you admit that you do not know everything. Some people, especially some people in power, tend to be allergic to criticisms. And remember that in a democratic society, criticisms are not so much about you as a person. It's about your responsibilities as a public official. So a certain dose of humility would help for them to listen to the experts in the field, to the experts on the ground. I'm not discounting their expertise. I'm not discounting their expertise. But um, if they need help, pwede naman humingi ng tulong eh, 'di ba?
Correct.
Ang problem kasi minsan initiative na ng taong bayan. Like let's say a group of doctors for example. A group of
Mhm.
doctors would say na, o ganito na yung gawin natin for the next ganito, ganyan, kasi pag hindi, tataas yung cases natin. Ano sasabihin nila? Hindi pwede kasi magsasuffer yung economy natin. Hindi pwede
Yes,
kasi
yes.
sabi ni ganito. Pero, that the fact that at least you listen and have the humility of mind and heart to listen to these experts who know their data and who spent an entire career studying this phenomena, I think it would help. It would help. As to the composition, that's a very specific question. Um, as to the composition of our pandemic response, isa lang yung doctor.
Mhm.
Isa lang yung doctor. And it's Secretary Duque. It's Secretary Duque. And unfortunately, Secretary Duque, he is a licensed physician. Pero based on his career, he served more in government like chairman of civil service. I think he was secretary of health also during the time of GMA.
Yes,
Pero it's
yes.
more of the administrative tasks. Now, we need a real expert, an
Mhm.
epidemiologist, for example, a public health expert in the panel. Kasi when you look at the composition, you have economists rather, you have one doctor, and the rest are retired military generals. Now,
Mhm.
I understand that one of the press conferences, I think that was last Monday, the president said na may tiwala siya in military officials. Hindi, sabi niya nga, hindi na daw kailangan ng doktor para sa
Mhm.
ganyan. Well, I partly agree. I believe in the efficiency of military organization. Pero when we talk about public health
Mhm.
emergencies, it's not like you're going to war, di ba?
Exactly.
Um, siguro you tap your former generals in the military to help with logistics, for example, transportation of vaccines, that's one. Providing yung military camps, for example, gawin silang mass testing centers kasi malalaki yung mga military camps, di ba?
Mhm.
Mass
Mhm.
testing center or vaccination centers. They are good in logistics. But in addressing a public health emergency, let's listen to the real experts. Doctors, 'di ba? Doctors, nurses, public health officers, 'di ba? Kasi ang nangyayari is that nasa kapangyarihan ako. I can do whatever I want. Well, it's not. It's not. Remember, public office is a public trust. And part of the public trust is that you are there in that position to listen to your fellow citizens who might be better at you at this certain field.
Mhm.
'Di ba? At this certain field. Like, yun nga, you're responding to a public health emergency. Again, emphasis on public health. Why would you put a retired general for the procurement of vaccines? Again, I'm not questioning the capabilities kasi so far
Mhm.
may dumadating na tayong bakuna. Pero
Yes.
it's better put there na let's say they're in charge of logistics, delivery, placement of vaccination centers, for example. Pero yung mismong in charge na titingin saan bibili ng bakuna, that's better left, for example,
I see.
yung negotiation, saan tayo kukuha ng
Mhm.
bakuna. On the negotiation side, you can give it to the DFA. Kasi foreign affairs yun eh. It's a foreign affairs matter. Like, ano ba yung mga partner countries natin na pwede nating hingan ng tulong? 'Di ba? Kasi I do respect our men and women in uniform. I believe in their capabilities. But sometimes we have to admit that they do not know it all. Okay? So that's one. Do we need to replace the current composition? Um, Not necessarily replace, but we have to expand it to include all sectors of society that's affected by
Okay.
this lockdown. So IATF kasi it's more of the management of the
Mhm.
infectious disease. But when you have a public health emergency, there's this certain notion that every sector is affected. So you have business, you have the academe, you have the basic education sector, for example, you have the transportation sector. And you don't see this eh. You don't see this. Like, for example, in other countries, I could not, I'm not sure, but I think it was in New Zealand, diba? The whole cabinet is their equivalent of the IATF. And the
Mhm.
chief was their health minister. And look at
Yes.
how effective New Zealand is in suppressing COVID-19, even without the vaccines yet. As early
Correct.
as October or September 2019, they were open, 2020 rather, they were
Mhm.
opening up the country. Diba? In fact, I
Exactly.
have this friend naman, she's from Australia, she's
Mhm.
going to work. Sabi ko, nagsusuot
Mhm.
ka pa ng mask. Sabi niya, as a precaution, nagsusuot ako, pero hindi na required sa amin. Kasi
Mhm.
mababa yung kaso. When you hear those stories, parang iisipin mo, bakit sa kanila sobrang effective? 'Di ba? So, bakit sa kanila sobrang
Correct.
effective? Sa atin, lahat ng lockdown, nilagay mo na MECQ, ECQ, GCQ, MGCQ, lahat ng variants
Bubble,
ng
we
may
have this
CQ
new
sa
one.
dulo, pero tumataas ang cases. 'Di
Mhm.
ba? Ang ina-expect pa nga nila, holiday ang surge. Pero bakit ngayon nagkaka-surge? 'Di ba?
Mhm.
And we have the data. We have the data. 'Di ba? Private research firms are there to provide the data. And they say that it's not the surge cannot be attributed to people going out. It can be attributed to new variants coming in to the country.
Mhm.
Specifically the South African, the
Yes.
UK, and the P3 variant. Yung P3 variant, this was first detected in Cebu.
Mhm.
Now, if you detected these variants, di ba dapat na-isolate mo na kaagad? And I remember this statement
Correct.
na hindi pa natin kailangan magsara ng flights from these countries kasi hindi pa naman nakakapasok.
Mhm.
And that is a very, um, parang kung gagamitan natin siya ng analogy, maglalak ka ba ng bahay? Kailan ka maglalak ng bahay? Bago makapasok ka magnanakaw o kung nakapasok na magnanakaw? Di ba dapat bago makapasok ka magnanakaw, maglak ka na ng bahay mo? Pero
Correct.
yung analogy kasi, parang papasukin mo muna yung magnanakaw bago tayo maglock ng gate natin tsaka ng pinto. Which is,
Actually, Sir Pat,
di ba, parang
naging
ano
ano na to
yun?
eh, naging usapan na to before pa, last year pa, before they closed airports for incoming and going out in the Philippines. Parang they waited pa na magkaroon ng case dito sa
Mm-mm.
Pilipinas before sila mag-lockdown. And ito, sinasabi daw si Tony, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, na they are still balancing daw the economy. That's why they are doing that. What can you say about that?
Um, okay. Ano to eh, I always give this problem to my students kasi I teach ethics, di ba? I teach philosophy. Sabi ko sa
Mhm.
kanila, yung pag-open ng economy at the expense of public health or public health at the expense of the economy, it's like a trolley problem, di ba?
Mhm.
It's like a trolley problem. But at the same time, you can understand it also as a false dilemma. As a false dilemma. How do I say that it's a false dilemma? You can open safely your economy without compromising public health. But then again,
Okay.
what's the response needed before you open your economy? Make sure that you have tested a sufficient number of the population before you open the economy. Ilan na mag-positive, you isolate them immediately and bring them to the latest treatment facility, which is what the strategy is for example, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, which is our neighbors, 'di ba? And they reopened their economy as early as what? July, August,
Mhm.
'di ba? They're back to normal. In Thailand, balik face to face sila since last year of I
Yes.
think October ata. Ano eh, hindi mo kasi pwedeng sabihin na kailangan natin buksan yung ekonomiya. Ang pandemya hindi basta-basta aalis. You need to prepare the groundwork for it.
Mm.
Okay? You need to prepare the groundwork for it. Because without the groundwork, talagang lolobo yung kaso mo, di ba? Talagang lolobo yung kaso mo. And for example, another response to that is that look at the GCQ guidelines. Look at the GCQ guidelines. Last year, a GCQ is understood to be the second strictest. Tama ba? Third strictest
Third,
pala.
third.
Kasi the strictest is ECQ, the second
ECQ,
strictest is
ME.
MECQ, then you have the GCQ, and the
Yes.
most lenient is the MGCQ.
Yes.
When you compare the GCQ, the first GCQ in Metro Manila last year, to the GCQ just before the bubble was introduced,
Mhm. Yes, yes, yes.
the GCQ of January to the first week of March wala siyang pinagkaiba halos sa MGCQ.
I
So,
totally agree.
parang naglagay ka pa ng classification, expand mo lang pala ng expand, bakit hindi mo na tinawag na MGCQ? Kasi you're confusing people eh. You're
Mhm.
confusing people. The more people get confused, the less they follow health protocols. Kasi parang naguguluhan sila, ano ba talagang susundin natin? ECQ, MECQ, MGCQ? Kasi 'di ba, nung ni-release nila yan, iba-iba yung iba-iba yung standards ng protocols na yan eh. Kaso anong
Yeah.
nangyari, yung GCQ nag-expand ng ng um dito ng liberalities to the point na hindi na na-distinguish ng tao.
Correct.
And then you roll out the vaccines. Pagka-roll out ng vaccines, ilang doses pa lang yon, sasabihin na kagad na panalo na tayo, na we're winning the war against COVID-19, when in fact, it's a minuscule part of the population who gets to be qualified for vaccination. And take note that these vaccinations are just donations. Hindi pa dumadating yung binili natin. Ako, for example, I'm banking on the private sector to get my vaccine. Hopefully, later this year, I get vaccinated kasi I'm depending on the private sector. Pero for most of our ordinary citizens, 'di ba? Those working in the informal sectors, for example, construction workers, sidewalk vendors, for example, jeepney drivers, na talagang nagpapatakbo ng ekonomiya natin. Paano kaya sila? 'Di ba? Paano kaya sila? Paano kaya sila babakunahan? Tapos mapipikon ka pa kasi mababalitaan mo mayroong artistang pumila, mayroong mga mayor na pumila, wala naman sa priority list. And take note that for vaccination, especially the donated ones through the COVAX facility, once you have violations on the vaccination protocol, at risk dito is 44 million doses of vaccines, which is a very large part in our fight against COVID-19. If you want to achieve herd immunity, you would need those 44 million. Kaya utang na loob, minsan hindi tao ang pasaway eh. Minsan hindi tao ang pasaway. 'Di ba? Oo. And with regard to balancing also between the health and the economy, it just shows that the bedrock of a good economy is a good healthcare system. A
I'm
good
sorry to
healthcare
say this,
system.
Sir
Mm.
Patrick, but once and for all, I just want to get your opinion. No?
Mm.
Do you think that Secretary Duque, as he is the head of everything right now for the COVID response, do you think that he needs to resign?
Okay. That's a very direct question that I will answer with
Mhm.
a very direct answer. Yes. If doctors themselves have lost their confidence in the health secretary, which is the premier doctor of this entire country, have lost their confidence, paano pa akong ordinaryong mamamayan? It's been blunder after blunder after blunder. And of course, I hope it doesn't take this personally. But it's blunder after blunder after blunder na ano pa bang, wala bang sense of delikadesa, for example? And then you're saying we're winning the fight against COVID-19. Yesterday, you had 9,800 cases. I mean, it's crazy eh. And kung ang takot lang naman ng presidente ay wala siyang ma-appoint na ibang health secretary, let me advise this one. There are many qualified health secretaries out there. You just need to look for them. And you just need to offer them the job. Kasi the problem is that people have lost confidence in the health secretary. Doctors have lost their confidence in the health secretary. Na kumbaga wala na siyang legitimacy to lead us in this fight against this unseen enemy, which is a virus, a microscopic creature. And the less people trust you, the less people will listen to you. That's very common sense, diba? Kung hindi ka pinagkakatiwalaan ng tao, bakit pa kita papakinggan? Nung roll out ng bakuna, in fact, kukwento ko lang to. My grandmother, who is a retired midwife, she's a retired midwife. So, marunong siya magbakuna ng mga bata. Kasi ginagawa niya yan nung kapanahunan niya. She's 85. She's turning 86 this year.
Wow.
Nung ni-roll out yung Sinovac, tapos nagbabakuna sa PGH and other public hospitals, she was watching the news. She was watching the news. Tapos, pinakita yung footage na si Secretary Duque nagbabakuna ng frontliner, yung symbolic first vaccination. Tapos alam mo sabi niya, actually natawa ako, sabi ng lola ko, Diyos ko po, kung yan health secretary hindi marunong magbakuna, paano ko pagkakatiwalaan yan?
Okay, napakalalim.
Oo. Sabi niya, tawag dito, pinapanood niya yung footage, sabi niya, mali yung administration niyo ng bakuna, hindi dapat ganyan, dapat ganito, dapat ganyan. Ina-explain niya sa akin. Ako, natatawa ako, and at the same time, it's a profound insight. Nasabi niya nga, kung health secretary hindi marunong magbakuna, paano ko pagkakatiwalaan yan? 'Di ba? It's a simple but a very profound insight, I must say.
Kasi, you know what, I ask you that question not just because to ask it, no, as your personal opinion about the issue right now, but there are groups, no, of doctors, medical professionals who talagang shouting, no, their sentiments to the secretary to resign because after a year we see the result. I'm sorry, no, pero nakakatakot, tumataas. And the mindset of the people that I will pose you, no, do you think that there is still COVID-19?
There is.
Okay.
There is COVID-19. I'm aware of the conspiracy theories floating around Facebook comment
Exactly.
sections. I'm aware of that.
Kasi
How
sinasabi
do I
nila,
say?
parang Sir Pat, no, just to add lang, na hindi na daw totoo. Kasi I've watched the news, no, sa US na parang sinasabi din nila na COVID-19 is a what you call the parang a propaganda wherein the economy, the people na mataranta. Kasi sabi din nila, naman on the medical side naman na hindi lang daw natin nakikita na hindi lang COVID-19 ang tumataas at nagkukos ng death. There are also diseases around us na tumataas. So why are we putting ourselves entirely in this kind of pandemic or COVID-19 daw? Okay, what can you say about that?
So it's not COVID-19 that will kill you. Okay? Linawin natin yun. It's not COVID-19 that will kill you. What will kill you? Pneumonia, for example. Pneumonia, tawag dito. You have lungs that would collapse, for example. Sometimes it's a complication of the heart, for example, especially if you have if you have pre-existing conditions, for example. So it's not really COVID-19 that will kill you, but the complications associated with that disease, the weakening of the immune system, for example. Why do I say that it's true? Because the tragedy is personal also to me. The tragedy is also personal to me. I had a couple of friends testing positive for COVID-19. Just this morning, one of my classmates from high school tested positive. And then my own brother-in-law in the United States tested positive for COVID-19, and he had to isolate himself from my sister and my nephew for 2 weeks. And the most tragic of it is that I have a relative who died of COVID-19, who is my uncle. My uncle was a dentist. So he has his own clinic, but at the same time, he also works for DOH, sa mga public health center. So when dental clinics and dentists were allowed again in their clinics to practice their profession after the hard lockdowns last year, so balik siya ng clinic niya. Kasi syempre, yun ang trabaho niya. And then, he did not know at that time that he contracted COVID. And then, as part of the testing, kasi tinetest sila regularly by the local government, as part of the testing, he was tested and he tested positive. Just 1 week after testing positive, the night before he died, one of my grandmother's sisters called him to check on him kasi syempre he's in isolation. To check on him kung kumusta na, may ba siyang pagkain, the usual kamag-anak diba? Mag-anak stuff. And then the sister of my grandmother noticed na hirap magsalita over the phone at hirap huminga. Tapos sabi nung lola namin na pumunta ka na ng ospital. Magpasugod ka na sa ospital, tumawag ka na ng ambulansya, magpasugod ka na sa ospital para at least meron ka ng oxygen. And then, binaba yung telepono. The next day, it was discovered that he died during the night. He died during the night. Nung tinignan sa autopsy, hindi siya nakahinga. Hindi siya nakahinga. And at the same time, meron din kasi siyang pre-existing condition sa heart. So, the fact that you cannot breathe exacerbated yung sakit niya sa puso. And it's very heartbreaking for us kasi the last time I met him was in 2019 pa ata. 2019. The next time I saw him, nasa lata na. Kasi abon na siya eh. Remember the protocol when someone dies of COVID-19 is that you get cremated immediately. No blessings, no funeral wakes whatsoever kasi it might be contagious. You get cremated immediately. Nakita ko siya, abot na. So, it's a very real tragedy and I would advise people spreading this information online. Don't wait for it to come to you personally. Whether sa inyo personally or sa mga kamag-anak nyo. Kasi it's a very hard experience to go through. Not just the experience of sickness and or losing a loved one, but the fact that even after death, you cannot see those loved ones anymore. Diba? So kung meron man kayong kamag-anak na sinugod sa ospital sa COVID-19 because of COVID, just hope that they will return safe and sound. Kasi if they die in the hospital, you won't see them anymore. And that was a very tragic lesson, I guess.
And that's the very sad part, no? You
and
mentioned.
That's the sad reality. That's the sad reality. Ayun.
Listening to you, no, medyo ini-internalize ko kasi although wala naman and wag naman po sana, no, marami kasing naaawa ako, no, sa mga katulad na mga ikinukwento mo kasi maraming mga anak, no, na nawala ng magulang that their parents are the frontliners and they keep saying the same words na sinasabi mo ngayon. So, ay nakakabuo ko ng konklusyon na talagang hindi ganun kadali, no? Yung sinabi mo nga kanina, no, you saw your uncle na 2019 lively, no, sobrang alive, now nasa lata na lang. Yun yung konsepto na hindi maintindihan ng ibang mga tao ngayon. Kung bakit galit din sila sa nagiging aksyon ng gobyerno kasi we need to consider na natatakot sila and they need action, hindi yung maglalagay ka ng dolomite, no? I don't know what it will give us. Sabi nila it's an emotional or mental din daw, pero yun yung totoo. Kaya naman, Sir Patrick, we will post a short break and then later I will mention some things na ginawa ng government natin during pandemic at bigyan mo ko ng pangunawa mo. Okay? During this pandemic, we will be generalizing everything. There are programs that led by the government, executed by the government, and we want to know what's your opinion about this kind of implementations and actions of the government. Kasi kanina na pag-usapan na natin about the COVID, very insightful, very informative. So now let's go on to a very light discussion, and this is about something to do about the government's action during the pandemic last year and up until these days. Okay. So students, youths, and sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin, the conversations will be right back.
We'll be back shortly. This is The Conversations, only here on Big Media.
an online program that takes you to all corners of beauty and lifestyle. This is Beauty in a Box, providing insights on how beauty and lifestyle of all kinds will be of help to everyone, may it be in their professional or personal lives, by improving one's confidence. Beauty in a Box, every Saturday, 1 p.m. Philippine time, hosted by certified makeup artist and beauty enthusiast, Aaliyah Ambre. Beauty in a Box, only here on V81 Radio, Manila. The program for the millennials that will showcase young professionals' worth, aspirations, and successes in doing what they believe is right, progressive, and inclusive. Making a difference. Making a difference. Join them as they discover the path to self and societal fulfillment while making a difference. Hosted by empowered and cool millennial Erica Mizon. Together with her cool millennials, they will be making a difference. Every Saturday, 3 p.m. Philippine time. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila. Always bringing you a different kind of music all the time. Here at Napalm, your new all-Pinoy alternative music source. Every Sunday at 1 p.m. Philippine time. Only here on V81 Radio, Manila, where alternative lives.
For harnessing luck and success in doing business. This is Philippine Business Feng Shui at your service. Sa ikaunlad ng bayan, Feng Shui ang kailangan. Hosted by your partner in luck, Master Adric Dalumpines. Every Wednesdays at 8 p.m. See you on our next learning modules for luck in business. Only here on Big Media. Now back to the conversations. Only here on Big Media.
Back, everyone, students, youths, and sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin. Okay, bago po natin na tawagin ulit ang ating guest, nagpapasalamat po ako sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin ngayong hapong ito. Kaya naman, Sir Patrick, ito na ang inaantay nating lahat. Okay. So Sir Patrick, madami palang nagpapasalamat na you have very insightful and informative discussion this afternoon. Madami na kasubaybay sa atin. I got a lot of PMs currently while we have a short break. Thank you daw. Lalo na dito kasi we have viewers outside the Philippines, no, especially in Macau and Thailand and the Middle East, who are watching talaga the conversations. And so far, this episode daw is talaga very informative. Kaya nag-PPM sila sa akin. Okay. Now, Sir Patrick, before we post a short break, I inform you na I'm gonna ask some questions or things na nangyayari during pandemic at bigyan mo kami ng pangunawa mo dito. Okay. Now, let's start with number 1. Ito. The network shutdown of ABS-CBN. What can you say about that?
Very bad timing. At the time that people were depending on the news media for information in a time of uncertainty, that was a very bad timing and a very bad political move, I must say.
Okay. How about number 2? The Dolomite issue. What can you say about that?
No, not really. Hindi talaga. Done in bad taste, done in bad timing. The 389 million could have been spent for vaccines or mass testing.
Why do you think, this is very political, but in a political manner, what do you think decides, why did this government do this kind of project?
Sa totoo lang, sa sa way of thinking, yung way of thinking nila minsan hindi ko maintindihan eh. Oo, okay. Kasi tawag dito, meron kang pandemya, tapos bigla kang magpapa-beautification ng Manila Bay. Ang sa akin, wala akong problema kung pagagandahin mong Manila Bay. Pero kasi ang sabi nila it's in the 2019 in the 2020 budget, so kailangan nilang gastusin. Kaso ang iniisip ko naman, pwede naman siyang i-hold muna. Pwede muna siyang i-hold. Kasi it's within the power of the department secretary, for example, or the president even himself to realign the budget. Ngayon, hindi ko magets kung bakit kailangan gawin siya in time of pandemic. Tsaka, ang sabi kasi, dun sa paglinis ng Manila Bay, eto I'm citing a Supreme Court decision, is that the government should ensure that the Manila Bay should be restored to its pristine condition healthfully and in consideration of the natural ecology of the place. Now, meron tayong mga research na ang dolomite ay hindi naman pala talaga healthy doon sa tubig kasi tawag dito, meron yung minerals which are harmful to health, 'di ba? If it's harmful to our health, what more for example, for fish, 'di ba, etc. Sa akin kasi, yun, I don't understand their way of thinking sometimes. So, I don't
Okay.
really know kung bakit sila nag-push through with the Dolomite thing sa kalagitnaan ng pandemya. Tapos, di ba, nakita natin yung effects niyan. After a few months, we had Ulysses. Di ba? Na sana pala yung 389 na yon pinang-restore na lang natin ng Upper Marikina, river
Correct.
shed sa east, sa Rizal. Alam mo yung mga ganung things, tawag dito. Kasi it was used for aesthetic purposes. It's not really a scientific solution, okay? Yun lang talaga.
Kasi syempre, sa gitna ng pandemya, aminin natin, no, talagang naging malaking issue. Kasi we are sa gitna ng panahon na maraming taong gutom, may milyong kang inilabas para sa buhangin. Well, it's
Mm-mm.
not, tama din naman ang sinabi mo. Okay, now, let's move on. I will mention names and top of mind. This is in the setup of pandemic, no? And what can you say about them? Let's start with VP Lenny.
Okay, VP Lenny, so far, good work. Sobrang ganda ng response ng OVP. I'm not saying this because nag-OJT ako doon. Nung nag-OJT ako,
Yeah.
hindi pa siya ang vice president. Lininawin ko lang po.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Now next, of course, let's go with the secretary himself, Secretary Duque.
Again, a little dose of humility, he should resign.
Okay. The current president of NCR, Mayors, Parañaque Mayor Edwin Olivares.
Mayor Olivares, so far he has been good in coordinating with his fellow mayors. The response has been good, so siguro thumbs up for him. Pero meron lang siyang downside. Yung sa artistang binakunahan sa Parañaque. Ang tanong lang doon, paano
Very recent,
lusot? Mm-mm.
Okay. Next, of course, Mayor Isko Moreno.
I'm not a resident of Manila itself, but hearing from my friends who are in Manila, the mayor has been doing a very good job. Kasi aside from the mass testing, the vaccination program, ang sabi nila even after ECQ, tuloy ang ayuda. So that's good. That's good kasi kailangan natin ngayon ay gastusin ng pera. Kung gusto mong pabalikan ang ekonomiya ng lugar mo, kailangan mong gastusin ng pera. Hindi
I
lang
understand.
utang kailangan mong gastusin yung inutang mo.
Totoo naman. Okay, next. Siyempre, hindi pwede mawala ito. None other than the mayor of Pasig City, Mayor Vico Soto.
Alam mo, whenever I see Mayor Vico on social media sa mga programs niya, it gives me a little tinge of hope na things would get better. Kasi, tawag dito, his response is very excellent in terms of management, not just in the management of Pasig City itself, but the management, alam mo yung common sense management, which is kailangan pag nasa local government ka. Hindi mo kasi kailangan dumepende na, itong bataas, itong kailangan gawin. Sometimes it's just common sense eh. And Vico has has common sense and also the drive to do things well. So I really commend him for that.
Okay. And this one, ito, very tumatakto sa mga Pilipino, no? Siyempre, sino pa ba? Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque.
Secretary Roque, let's stop deluding ourselves. We are not doing well, okay? Yun lang ang masasabi ko. Ano pa masabi ko, but let us not deceive ourselves. We're not doing well. Oo, wag mo nang lokohin ng sarili mo at wag mo nang lokohin ng taong bayan.
Very Okay, siyempre, hindi mawawala ito. President Rodrigo Duterte. What is
President
your...
Duterte, tawag dito, you need to be surrounded by better advisors, I guess. Kasi sometimes I understand baka it comes with age na you're really tired, 'di ba? And you just depend on people that you know. But there are when we give criticisms, it's not against you. It's not we don't criticize you personally, okay? We criticize you because we want to help. You listen to people. You listen to people also. It would not hurt you. It would not hurt you to listen to people.
Okay. Now, thank you for your inputs. Thank you for your words about these people na during this pandemic, these names are very usual talagang napag-uusapan. And now, let's move forward in this kind of phase we're in. Sir Patrick, if you will consider things or action plan for the government to make this pandemic more easier to, syempre hindi agad-agad to, pero to consider, what are the considerations? What are the plans do you think that lack here in the current administration? Can you give us some?
Okay. Siguro on top of my mind, I would say the vaccine rollout. We
Okay.
have the vaccines already. Pero when you look at the data, isa tayo sa mga pinakamabagal mag-roll out ng bakuna. We have 0.2 per 100 people na nababakunahan. And when you consider the population of the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, we're around 105, 110 million. Kung i-consider mo yung population ng Pilipinas, all of us would get vaccinated by 2024 or 2025. And we cannot wait that long.
Yes.
'Di ba? Siguro yung kailangan mas aggressive tayo sa vaccination eh. Ano yung aggressiveness dito? Hindi lang sa mismong pagbabakuna, but to build up public confidence in the vaccines. There's this latest survey that 61% of Filipinos are hesitant to take the COVID vaccine. Now, if 60%, which is a majority of your
Yes.
population, are hesitant of vaccines, then we will not find the end in this problem. Now, we need to build up confidence in our vaccines. Kasi syempre, ang daming umiikot na na misinformation from pwede daw nitong pwede ka magkaroon ng COVID, babaguhin daw nito yung DNA nyo. Of course, it's not. And siguro hindi rin kasi nakatulong na we had a controversy with vaccines just a few years ago with Denvaxia. So, kailangan natin ibalik yung tiwala natin sa bakuna. For example, bigyan ko kayo ng example. Yung usual na vaccine natin para sa mga bata, yung MMR, dapat ang vaccine coverage natin, the vaccine coverage needed for us to achieve immunity for that should be 92%, at least 92%. For the last 20 years, we've been maintaining that. But for last year ata, parang bumaba tayo to 80% na lang, which is a dangerous number. Ibig sabihin, 20% of children aren't taking their vaccines because of the fear of vaccination. Kung takot lang kayo sa needle, okay lang yan. Madali yang ma-overcome. Ako personally, takot ako sa needles, but I'm excited to get my vaccination. So it's a two-pronged approach. Number one, to increase the the public confidence in vaccines, and second, the rollout of our vaccines. The second one is how to minimize siguro yung number of infections. We cannot go always on a lockdown because a lockdown's purpose is to buy time for our health professionals to increase bed capacity, to increase mass testing. Kung magda-lockdown lang tayo pero wala tayong proactive response such as dagdagan yung capacity ng mga hospitals natin, increase mass testing, 'di ba? Wala ring mangyayari. So in order to bring down the number of infections, the lockdown has to be a proactive approach. Hindi ka lang magsasara basta. You have to do mass testing. You have to increase the capacity of your hospitals. You have to increase the capacity of our health workers. You have to increase, kasi syempre kinukulang tayo ng health workers ngayon because some of them are in quarantine, for example. So nagiging nagiging dagdag na problema pa yan So kailangan as much as possible yung manpower natin, kailangan nating ma-maintain. And at the same time, it should not be too restrictive on those who depend on their livelihoods. Like yung sinasabi ko kanina, the informal sector, for example. Kasi sometimes sometimes our policies, in terms of economic policies, di ba? Hindi na lang economic, transportation, for example. For example, in transportation, nagbukas ka nga ng kumpanya, pero hindi ka nag-provide ng public transport. So, sino makakapasok? Yung may sasakyan. 'Di ba?
Exactly.
Ito yung mga to, kung meron kang sasakyan, obviously you can afford working from home. Pero yung for example, construction workers, 'di ba? Construction workers, grocery personnel, mga cooks sa mga restaurants, kahit take home delivery and they still have to work syempre. If you don't provide them public transport, 'di ba? Wala public transport, paano magtatrabaho yung mga yan? Binuksan mo yung groceries, tawag dito, paano pupuntahan ordinaryong tao dyan para mamili? Kung wala kang public transport, kahit tricycle man lang yan, di ba? Or pedicab. Parang ako, naalala ko noon, nautusan ako mag-grocery, kasagsagan ng ECQ. I had to walk 2 kilometers to the
You're the
grocery.
yung merong quarantine pass, you're the one allowed sa household nyo.
Dalawa kami may quarantine pass, ako tsaka yung
Okay.
mother ko. Pero there are times na ako yung kailangan lumabas kasi 'di ba parang isa lang yung pwedeng lumabas eh.
Correct,
So,
correct.
alala ko, I had to walk 2 kilometers in the summer heat kasi wala akong masakyan. Oo. Yung mga ganong if you want to open your economy, you have to have the incentives in opening the economy. Public transport, di ba? Mass
I agree.
testing, safer workplaces, for example. Those are simple things. Those are common sense things na, alam mo yun, minsan hindi mo kailangan pag-isipan eh. Di ba? Pero, hindi mo siya kailangan pag-isipan, but at the same time, you should know that those things should be in place before you reopen. Diba?
Exactly.
So, yun yung mga naiisip ko on top of my head siguro.
Which is true, no? Dadagdagan ko lang yung sinabi mo kanina, the transportation. It's very, when people will heard it, no, bad transportation, it's a great, effect sa mga mabababa. Kasi your experience, I had the same experience kasi during that time then I'm working in Ortigas. Now, ang hirap ng transportasyon kasi wala talagang bus, walang masasakyan. Madali siguro, no, Sir Pat, para sa may mga kaya. Pero sa mga na-mention mo nga, na I'm gonna use this, no, na mga nasa laylayan ng lipunan, talagang mahirap. Napaka-critical ng estado natin ngayon dahil ang COVID-19 kumbaga kadikit na ngayon binago niya in just one snap ang lahat. Ikaw ba, indulge us, noong mga panahong sinabi na may COVID na, lockdown na, anong naramdaman mo?
Anong naramdaman ko? No, hindi ako natakot eh. Hindi ako masyadong
Okay.
natakot dun sa possibility. Kasi, yun nga, I come from a family of health workers, retired and in service. So, kung alam na namin yung gagawin, disinfection, magsuot ng mask, ganyan. It's more of confusion, siguro. It's more of confusion kasi early days of the lockdown, you had these contradicting statements. Diba? Na,
Yes.
diba? There are contradicting statements from MMDA, for example, and the DOTR will say the other thing, DOH will say this, your local government will say other things. Parang sabi ko, ano ba talaga? Sino ba talaga susundin, di ba?
Mhm.
And if you have, di ba, yung meron nga tayong kasabihan, too many cooks spoil the broth. Ganun yung nangyayari. Ang dami-daming nagsasalita, ang dami-daming talking heads. Hindi mo alam kung sinong papaniwalaan mo. Kasi araw-araw merong press briefing, chairman ng IATF. After noon, magpe-press briefing ang PNP. After noon, magpe-press briefing ang MMDA. Tapos, pag pinakinggan mo sila, iba-iba yung sinasabi nila. So, parang
Correct.
ako, at that time, sabi ko, ano ba talagang paniniwalaan ko? So, to be sure, sa barangay ako magtitiwala. Kasi that's that's the most local level of government eh. So, pag binigyan ako ng quarantine pass ng barangay namin, at makakalabas ako, okay, that's good. Pero, as to the other macro level, national government level, parang sabi ko, ano ba talaga? Ano ba talaga, kuya, ate? Ano
Yes,
ba talaga
Sir
sinasabi?
Patrick, kasi kahit ngayon, 'di ba?
Kahit
I
ngayon,
heard this
actually.
news, they have implemented this that na the churches will totally close, no any mass gathering, and then of course, marami naman nagsasabi na hindi daw pabago-bago. And syempre,
Agree.
tayong mga tao no na susunod naman ito nga no, siguro I'll agree on what you said earlier, minsan hindi talaga tao na yung may problema, minsan yung nagpapatakbo na kasi kung ito yung gagawin, ito yung implementation, ito yung sinasabi nila, pero ito naman yung ginagawa ng iba, magulo.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, siguro marami pang pagdadaanan ng ating bansa ngayon, Sir Patrick, no? And last word from you, what can you say about the current situation in general to the government, to the health workers, and to the Filipino people before we
Mm.
end our program?
Siguro last word, the threat is still there. We are fighting a war, and we're fighting a war against an unseen enemy. Kung meron mang panahon na kailangan nating magtulungan as one people, as one nation, now is the time. Now is the time. But again, in order for us to help you have to allow us to help you. Hindi kami makakatulong kung hindi kayo makikinig sa amin, 'di ba? Siguro maraming salamat din sa ating health workers. Isang taon na kayo nagsasakripisyo na hindi makita ang mga anak nyo, hindi nyo man lang sila mayakap, hindi man lang kayo makatulog sa iisang kwarto kasama ang mga anak nyo. Pero some of you have received the shots, so congratulations. Pero tawag dito, minsan masasabi ko kapit lang talaga kapit lang. Kung meron mang panahon na kailangan natin ilabas ang diwa ng bayanihan, ngayon yun. Ngayon tayo kailangan magtulong-tulungan, ngayon tayo kailangan magbayanihan. Kasi iisa ang kalaban natin. Hindi kalaban ang oposisyon, hindi kalaban ng gobyerno. Ang kalaban natin ay isang sakit. At ngayon tayo kailangan magtulungan, ngayon tayo kailangan magbayanihan. Siguro yun ang masasabi ko na lang.
Maraming salamat, Sir Patrick Pineda,
Thank you
for
so much.
very touching message. Sa panahon kasi ngayon ako, Sir Patrick, kung ako yung tatanungin mo, very, it's a broad way for me to understand. Still, I am on the process. It's very personal. Wherein I am taking everything kasi ang daming naganap eh. I've been facing a lot of, then since the pandemic went in, I have my little company before and everything, work and stuff, talagang gumuho. And mahirap, no, na talagang harapin ang ganitong pandemya. Kaya, tulad ng sinabi ni Sir Patrick, mga kababayan, mga kabataan na nanonood sa atin ngayon, let's help one another, and yung mga safety protocols na ginagawa, please still continue and pray. Diba? Yun naman po yun. Kaya Sir Patrick, on behalf of the people behind the conversations and the big media network, thank you so much for indulging us this afternoon. Maraming salamat, and may babatiin kang personal, mga students mo?
Thank you so much.
Sila, Sir
Thank you so
Gal.
much for the invitation. This is a good conversation actually. I think my students are watching and also my colleagues. So if you're watching, hello.
Okay.
Oo. Ito na yung pina-plug ko sa inyo. So, ayan. So thank you so much, Chester. This has been a very good conversation.
Thank you so much, Sir Patrick, and I hope soon maiimbitahan ka namin ulit sa aming programa. So muli,
Sure.
maraming salamat, and mabuhay ang bawat frontliners, and still hope with the government to continue their actions and plan for the entire Philippines. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is your anchor, Chester Quidlat, and this is The Conversations.
It's time to feed your mind. It's time to know the real answer. It's time to be aware. Information that you need to know, straight from the experts. Timely, reliable, and relevant. Different sides of issues and from different walks of life. All of them with questions that demand answers. Here in The Conversations with Chester Quidlat, every Sunday at 10 a.m. Only here in Big Media.